Morning, Carlos. Good to see you. Hope you've had I won't say a nice break, because I know you'll have been working very hard. Let's start with your team news, if we can. Can we get a bit of a recap of where everybody's at? Let's start with those who picked up injuries in the last games. Jonathan Hogg and Dwayne Holmes, how are they?
Different injuries, like I said after the game. Hoggy will be, I think, out of the team around 6 weeks. This is more or less the time that the doctors said to us, because he had a problem in the knee. In one, like you were watching in the first minutes of the game, he turned his knee in one action when he wanted to make a switch of play, and it was an accident. Then he is going to miss the next weeks is not going to be with the team. Holmes is a different type of injury because it's a muscle injury in his leg. Then he will be out this game. It's on doubt to the game in the middle of the week. And I think the more normal thing is that maybe he has options to go to the game of the middle of the week, because he's going to make a training today. But with guarantee from the doctor point of view, he will be ready in a fitness level to be, or in a physical level to be in the next week game.
How about Jordan Rhodes? What's the latest on his situation? How far away is he?
He's progressing really well. During this week, he has been doing some drill with the team. He couldn't complete any training yet because the doctors don't allow him. The doctors don't allow him to make any game situation, but he's doing some of the exercises, some of the drills that we are doing. And from the next week, he's going to, I think the normal thing is that we start to introduce him in a game situations in the training and start to his process of adaptation to the level, to the football level.
And then he's got to get fit as well, hasn't he? Of course, if he's not been doing any of the training sessions as well, that's quite a way off then still.
Yes, we know that it's a long-term injury, and the long-term injury, usually we spend more time to make the normal adaptation, not just to the physical, to every level. But it's true that even in the gym, he was doing a good job, and I was watching him that I expect to have less time of recovery that I was thinking just for the long term of the injury. So, because I am watching him well, but it's true that we are watching him well, working in the gym or start to work now with the group in more exercises than game situations. So now, of course, start this process, but I don't think it's going to be too long.
How about Ryan Schofield? Is he fully back? Is he back available for you now?
He's going to make the training today because he was playing the other day with the B team in the cup game that the B team is playing, and he was playing, but at the end he was one of the subs because he was feeling something in the back, but it was normal because in one of the actions he went to the floor, and it was normal to have this type of maybe of pain, but was more for precaution than for any important thing. Yesterday he was testing with the doctor here in the club and looks fine. So he complete the training today. He's going to be one of the options that we have.
Aaron Rowe?
No, Aaron Rowe still, we have the same situation than before. He couldn't make any training with us. He continued working with the medical staff in the pitch, trying to see if he continue adapting or not, but it's an injury that the doctors cannot tell me in which day he's going to come back. It's an injury that he can come back as soon as he doesn't have pain. So still we are in the process to wait, but of course it's been a very long-term injury. In more injury players, Pipa continue his normal process of adaptation. Now he starts to make some technical work, but until we don't expose him during the next 10 days to high intensity, we don't know if he's improving or not. And the doctors need to wait a little bit more of time to make his body adapt and to make the different injections that he's having give enough time to see that the day that the target with him is that the day that he starts to be exposed to the high intensity, he doesn't feel pain, then he can be normal, making the normal adaptation in the normal work with the group, something that he cannot do right now. The last player of injury is Vallejo. From the last game that he was playing is Blackburn, there has been like a delay in the time that he could come back with the group, because at the end, like I said at the beginning, the injury looks like one treatment will be perfect. After we have to change because he had pain in the injury, and now in the last scan that we did with him, appeared another problem in the knee that doesn't allow him to come back to the trainings, and he's not going to be available in the next game either.
And Pieper, finally, just on his progress, how's he getting along with his rehab?
Yes, maybe I explained bad because I was explaining about Pieper, but maybe I don't. Maybe I didn't explain well. But the progression with Pieper is fine, but we need to give like around 10 days more to start to expose him with the high intensity, to make the injection work for the high intensity. So as soon as we know how he adapts to the high intensity work, we'll know when is the right moment to introduce him in the dynamic of the group.
My bad. I thought you were still talking about Vallejo. My bad on that one. How has the international break been then? Because you've obviously got a lot of players there that you haven't been able to use that much. And how have those players that have been away on international duty come back? Have they all come back okay? Are they all available for you as well in Sinani and Thomas?
I think they have arrived, or they have had a different international break in terms of the game time. The player with more game time has been Colwill, because he was playing 3 games with England under 19. He was playing close to 80 minutes in the first game, in 90 minutes. So of course has been the player with more minutes in the legs. But it's true that he was feeling well, and the position of the central back is different position of another player in the pitch. But his recovery is been fine, and he will do today the training with the group. The other player following the number of the minutes was Sinani, because he was playing 75 minutes the first game, and the full game in the second international break, the World Cup qualification. But it's true that it's the first time that we have Sinani that he didn't play the game on Tuesday, he was playing the game on Sunday. So it allowed him to have like close to 1 week of time between the last game that he was playing and the game that we are going to have tomorrow. He feels fine in normal conditions to come training today again with the group, because he was doing recovery yesterday, and 2 days ago he was doing some technical work by himself to make easy this process of recovery. And after following minutes, is Scott High, that he was playing 2 full games with Scotland under 21, playing more as a position midfielder in this moment. But he is a different player because he didn't have the same number of minutes of the players that we were talking before until now. So I think it's been a very good time for him to continue improving him as a player. He's a young player that he continue having this type of situation are going to help him in his develop as a player. And after Sorba Thomas was the player with more minutes in our team before he went with the international break, and he was having more time to train that game time because he didn't play any of the 2 official games that his country was playing. So he arrived after the international break with a half the game exposure with the national team.
And with those players away and with all the injuries you've got, have you still been able to make it a positive 2-week break for your team? Have you still had a lot of positivity come out of it in what you've been able to work on with them?
Yes, we have to use always the international break in the same way that we want to use. The first part of the international break is very important to give the recovery, the rest for the players, especially for the players that were accumulating many minutes in the legs. After the second part of the first week, you start to compensate, to continue this process of adaptation to come back to the normal tempo of the training of football for the players that have more minutes, and for the other players, directly you start to work with a high intensity to compensate the minutes, trying to replicate the more that we can game situation. We were playing 1 game with the B team the last Friday, playing 2 parts of 45 minutes, like trying to replicate an official game. And we did this for the players that didn't have the same number of minutes of the other players, trying to help them to be ready to the game exposure, because it's not the same. Never. It's impossible to replicate the same demand in one training that the demand in that one official game has. And even if one friendly training game with players of our club is not the same, help them to be living the same distances, and especially be having the feeling to have 2 parts of 45 minutes playing a row, that is something impossible to replicate in the training. So in this part of the work for me was fine. We didn't have any injury. We were using that time to make some recovery for the player that start to have some small issue that could be Danny Ward or Brian in the first part of the previous week, because when the player accumulate minutes, start to have more muscle fatigue. But the second week of the international break was a normal week. Everyone was doing the normal training. So for me, everyone arrived in a good conditions to the next game.
How long did it take you to calm down after the Cardiff game, Carlos? You were very angry with the late winner by Cardiff. Your jacket came off. A couple of water bottles were got a bit of your fury as well. How long did it take you to recover from that?
Well, the jacket was because it was not so cold. I was expecting to be more cold, and after, of course, with the feeling of the game, I was start to feel more warm than cold. But it's true that it was one game for me, one defeat, difficult to accept. Difficult to accept. Not because we deserve, because at the end, when you lose one game, it's because you didn't do enough things well to win that game. It's true. It's a message. But it's, for me, when you analyze the game, it's true that we did enough things to can unbalance that game and to can score in any of the chances that we create and create a different result. But like we didn't do, we need to see the points that are going to make the team more experienced or more competitive, because as soon as you are not scoring the opportunity that you need to have the mentality to continue avoiding the last part of the chances that the opponent is going to create. So for me, it was one defeat, difficult to digest, but at the end we need to do. But especially we need to analyze to try to use this type of performances or these type of moments to improve and to create the right mentality that we need to create the right mentality to be the more competitive team that we can be. And I think in this game, we didn't show all our competitive level because we could manage better some of the situations that we had to resolve from the game.
And it's about responding to that now, isn't it? It's about your team. They've had 2 weeks to stew on that, 2 weeks to think it over. It's about getting that response from them this weekend.
Yes, but knowing that every game is going to be different, because sometimes maybe the answer for that game are going to be different of the answer that we are going to need in the next games that we are going to play. But of course, football always make you come back to the similar situation. So of course, during one season, you will have similar type of moment that we need to manage. So it doesn't mean that the consequence of the work that we can do is going to arrive immediately. It means that as a team, you need to grow this mentality for the different situations that we are going to be or we are going to have during one season.
And what about West Brom next up then? Karlan Grant, former Huddersfield Town man in fine form, 8 goals in 16 for him. How dangerous a side are they?
They are one team that they are competing really well in the league. They are in a good position. It's going to be one challenge for us. One team with one especially style of game. But it's true that always when you have more time to prepare the games, I think you can be more adapted to know the situation that we are going to live. But one thing is to know or expect some situation. Another thing is to have the answer to solve the different situation that we are going to be. Then tomorrow will be the day that we need to show that we are able to solve and to play against any type of opponent and to give the answer that we want to give.
Thank you, Carlos. All the best tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Johnny. Steve, we'll come to you, please.
Hi, Carlos. Who are you looking at to replace Hoggy then? You seem a bit short on midfield options with no Hoggy, no Holmes, no Vallejo. Is Scott High going to be in the side, do you think?
Yes, I have 2 players to replace him. The normal option, more than the normal, the player that is playing and have the Abbey more is Scott High, because when Hoggy had the injury against Peterborough, he was the player that was replacing him. When Vallejo and Hoggy has the injury and he was have to play against Luton before to that time too. Now, even the time that he was playing with Scotland, playing more as a positional midfielder, for me is no Scott position, because I am imagining Scott is one player that he needs space and distance to cover and to run, and the best of Scott appear when he has more spaces in front to attack. But he's a player special because he can adapt to play in different positions. And for me, B position midfielder is not his main position, but it's one position that he can manage perfectly. The other player that can play there is Russell, one player that is with the V team at the beginning of the season, but now in the last weeks before this, he was involved against Luton with the group, and he's been one player that from that moment he's working regularly with the first team because he's the other alternative player that we have to play in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, and when you go into this 3-game week, obviously you played the same side a lot previously. 5 of the last 6 games, it's been the same lineup. Obviously, you're now going to have to change. Are you going to look to rotate the squad over the next few games, or is it just sort of see how it goes on Saturday first?
No, the first thing you always have 2 things about the rotation. If you analyze the freshness, I am going to give you 2 examples, one about injuries, one about freshness, because are the 2 things that when you make rotation, you can be thinking in your mind. Avoid the injuries and provoke the freshness of the players. In the last game, for example, the highest physical value of Sinani arrived in the game against Cardiff. And Sinani, for example, was one player that was playing the last games from the first 11. But he was running more than 13 kilometers in total distance, and he was running more than 1,200 high intensity running. And he achieved this value just 2 days after Peterborough game. So it means that sometimes the player, the more they are playing with the team, the more habit they have to compete and giving the answer to the football situation, because the normal thing is that if one player is too fatigued, cannot achieve his highest physical value. We don't talk about the football performance, but it's true that for me, Sinani was doing a very good game he was performing really well from the football point of view, from the tactical or technical point of view. But yes, if we don't analyze this and we analyzing the physical values, is surprised to see that he was achieving his highest value in our club and his highest value in his career as a player after being playing games in a row. And after, if you compare this, not the freshness value, that is one important when you are making decisions in the first 11. If you analyze the prevent of the injuries, for example, the player that arrived with less game time from the previous game to Cardiff game was Hawk, because he only played 45 minutes in the previous game. And in the minute 3 of the game, he had the injury. That doesn't mean that he's related with any type of fatigue. It was related with one accident, one action that appeared in one game that destabilized his body in this situation. So, of course, when you know the things, you will try to avoid some situations that happen. It's true that for me, the first muscle fatigue that we are having now was Holmes the other day in the game. But always you need to be thinking, for me, the performance of the player, the performance of the team, the level of each player, and talking with the medical staff to see which player arrive in a good conditions or doesn't arrive in a good conditions to compete, knowing that another of the demands of the championship is play games in a row. And when you are one player that you have the habit to play in a row, the risk of injury is less because you have the habit to play in a row and you have been having this habit during years in your career. That's why, for example, from the recruitment point of view, this year, we try to add players to the club with the habit to play more than 3,000 minutes. So it means that they have the habit to play in a row, because this is going to be one of the demands of the championship. Play like Matty Pearson was playing with Luton the last year, all close to all the minutes. Leeds, until his injury in the last part of the season with Sheffield Wednesday, he was one player with the habit. Turton was playing more than 3,500 minutes the last year. With Blackpool, with Oxford, Ruffles was playing more than 3,500 minutes too. So we know that this is part of the demands of the league. This is one part of the demands of the British football, because you play many minutes in a row. And always we need to evaluate the need of the team, how one change of one player is going to affect to the performance, the collective performance of the team, the level of the player to see if the player is ready to perform or is not performing well, the risk of injury and the need of the freshness. But knowing that even you are trying to make the best decision with these points, you never have the right answer, because after arrive one player like Sinani, and achieve the highest physical value, showing that you can be thinking that he could be more fatigued than in our previous games, and he was competing in the best way and competing 90 minutes, that he didn't play 90 minutes against Miguel or play 90 minutes against Peterborough. Another thing for me, of the aspect that is important to analyze and to manage during the game is to give the option to rest some minutes, no without being a starting player. Like be analyzing how many minutes the player can have in his leg, and to see maybe in the minute 60 and minute 30 minutes can help him in the next games too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for clearing that up. On that theme, though, I mean, how close you talked before about Rolando Aarons, Mipo Adebayo have been not quite at the level you want to see. Are they any closer to that now after this break?
Mipo is one player that he will come to the group. He will be tomorrow. The normal thing, if everything goes well today, he will come back to the group tomorrow. And because I was watching a better week of work with him, he was using for me this international break in the way that one young player needs to use to continue making his progress, to continue growing as a player, and to show some of these growing things in the game situations. That's why I am happy with his involved, and he can be the normal thing that he will be involved tomorrow if everything goes well today. With Rolando Aarons is different. I don't have to tell you this because he was involved in the last games, even if we are not watching him playing the minutes, because always as a coach we need to be thinking what is the player that I consider that arrive in a better, that can give more things to the team at that moment. So of course when one player is involved in the team is because I consider that he can give things to the team, but always I need to make decisions watching what is the player that arrive with in a better conditions to give more, to help more the team and to be in the first 11.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Thanks, Carlos. Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, Steve. Steve, thanks for your patience. We'll come to you.
No problem. Morning, Carlos.
Morning.
Can I ask you, when you mentioned the options to replace Hogg, you didn't mention Lewis O'Brien, who can also play there. Is that because he's so important to you at the moment with what he can bring slightly further up the field?
No, if we play, I didn't mention him because we are playing with him.
Yes.
So it's true that we are talking more about the player that is with him in the middle of the pitch than we do that with the player that is going to replace him. I understand that if O'Brien is able to play, he is being one of course, our key players, one of our most important players, because he's showing this with his performances in the pitch. So that's why I am talking more about the player that can be with him in the middle when Hogg is not, or when Vallejo is not available, than to be looking for one player that can replace him.
Sure. No, I just meant he sort of he plays a bit further forward than Jonathan, doesn't he? He gives you a little bit more in terms of progression into the box and that sort of thing. And I guess that's very important for your team at the moment. And he's doing it very well.
Yes, exactly. I think he's one player that I don't consider that he's a number 6 player or a position midfielder. I consider that he's one player that is more number 8, because the best of O'Brien appears when he has this space that I told you before to Scott too. But we know that he's a player that has more experience to cover all these distances. And as soon as we reduce the option of O'Brien to arrive to offensive box and to attack too, we are limited in one player that his strength is to be a box-to-box player. So that's why I don't consider, and I try to avoid the option to play with O'Brien as a position midfielder.
Yeah. And you've talked all the time you've been at Huddersfield about what an important player Lewis O'Brien is for the team and for the club. He's still a very young player, but it seems like he's quite a leader on the pitch as well.
In football, you have different type of leaderships, no, or leader skills of the players. Some players are more speaking players, or they talk, are more talking leaders, because they have experience in the back and they try to communicate and they try to support the squad more with the words. And this is something positive. Another player for me are more leaders with the behaviors, with the football behaviors. They have less, they don't have many things to say, but with his example, with their examples, they communicate and they send a message to everyone, to the opponents and to the teammates, because they compete in one level that allow the team to be an important players and to be some of the key players on the games. And I consider that O'Brien is this type. He's in this type of group of players. Of course, O'Brien is a young player, but now this is his third season in the championship. So now but it's true that in the first season, when I wasn't working here, he was more important player in the second part of the season than just from the beginning. The last year, he was an important player of the season from the beginning until the end. And we are just in the half of this season. But it's enough time to see that O'Brien is very important for the group, for the squad, for the club, for the game. And is for me one of the more special players, even one player that I understand that he has a brilliant future in the football.
And you talked about Daniel Sinani's physical condition at the moment, and obviously he scored his first goal for the club just before the international break. Do you feel he's starting to really adapt well to English football?
I think so, because what he's showing. I think some players need some time to adapt to every type of demanding. It's true that the first game that he was playing with the team was in the Cup against Everton. He was fantastic, performing fantastic. So it means that sometimes the players are capable, but it's only to fix point that is important to fix. And I think from the physical point of view, one player that didn't do the precision, because at the end he didn't do the precision with us, and he did a strange precision in Norwich because he couldn't be working with the normal, with the group. He was working more individual with some of the coaches. It's important to have this time for the player to adapt and to be in one collective dynamic, to start to be part of one group of players and start to work these relations. So as soon as he was late with us, because he was the last player that we had to the club, he needed some time, not only to adapt to the fitness levels, to adapt to the dynamic of one group of players too.
And it must just be difficult, obviously you'll have experienced it, just adapting to a different culture and a different language when you come to a new country as well. It's not as simple as just the football.
Yes, but I know that he's a player that after he was leaving his country, he was playing after he came back to England, but he didn't play before with Norwich. He went alone to Belgium. Then he had to make this process to adapt to different group of players, different country. After he came back to the pre-season to England again, and now he had the opportunity to start to give his first steps in the British football. But of course, it's true that is a challenge for every player. But I think Sinani have the mature enough to adapt very well, because sometimes it's not only football things; it's like a mind things too, to adapt to different style of life. But he's a player very calm, very focused and concentrating his work, very mature, and with sometimes with enough international experience. And this international experience helped him, because when you're an international player, you need to have the ability to change from your group of players in your club to be working with different players, to having experience to travel, to be living and playing against in different countries, against different type of opponents, different opponents of your league. So as soon as you are having this experience, this can help you to have an easy adaptation.
And just on West Bromwich Albion, I know you've faced Valérien Ismaël's Barnsley side last season, who obviously played a similar style. What are the sort of challenges that their style of play poses to you?
If you analyze West Bromwich, is one team with one identity very clear to show and different from other teams. They don't change the shape. There is one team that plays with the 3-4-3, but with the 3 players in the back. One team that they want to play the game in their attacking half, because they want to defend very high. They play with the keeper, who take the more highest position for me of the league, covering the back of the defenders, trying to play with 7 players, even with 8 players sometimes, and being very aggressive in the pressing. We can say that the style for me, that they are very focused to make very aggressive pressing. So when you are managing, when you are attacking in your defensive half, you need to manage the ball very well to avoid the press that they are going to do. And after this, one team with very good players. Then they have the miss. So it's not the same of Barry last year because he has a different player. Only one player continue be with him working, Mowat, the midfielder. But it's a different team, it's a different players. But it's clear that you can recognize the style as a one team, very dangerous in the set pieces. So it's true that tomorrow the set pieces in defense and the set pieces in attack are going to have an important in the develop of the game. And one thing that with his aggressive on the pressing need to make us know how we need to avoid this behavior that they are going to do.